Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for coming to today's webinar. I'm so excited for you guys to meet Dan and hear everything he has to say today. So today, your speaker will be Dan Streeter. He is the founder and CEO of Mission Fuel, an AI-powered e-learning company serving associations and nonprofits and other organizations. And before becoming an entrepreneur, Dan spent years as a high school teacher and school principal, where he developed a very deep passion for education and how it can transform lives. That passion for education and innovation drove him to build Mission Fuel, where he now helps organizations scale their educational offerings and by using cutting-edge AI and instructional design. I will now pass over to you, Dan.
Hey, thank you so much, Chris. It was great to see you, and thanks so much for the opportunity from Cadmium, Elevate, Ethos, and all of the Cadmium companies. So thank you so much for the opportunity to get started. And so here we go. Of course, we're here to be able to talk about our presentation today is from 200 hours to minutes, a new model of e-learning production. And we're going to get a chance to see a little bit of that in action. So let's go ahead and get to it. And here we go. First off, of course, here's my contact information. You are welcome to go ahead and to reach out to me at any time if you wish. If you go ahead and you click on that little QR code, of course, then you can reach out to me on LinkedIn and all those sort of things as well. And of course, we would love to be able to make the announcement that Dr. Angela Robbins has joined our team as well. You may have known her in the association learning space for a very, very long time. And so she is brand new to our team. It's about her second or third week, I think. And we would love to be able to get her in close contact with you as well. And so all of that is pretty great. Okay, and when we go ahead and we take a quick look at our site, please feel free to go ahead and visit us at missionfuel.ai. And of course, you can follow us at LinkedIn as well. And if you would go ahead and you can use the QR codes along the way to be able to make that happen too. So let's go ahead and get started to it. Of course, if you'd like the opportunity to be able to learn a little bit more about Course Engine, a little bit more about Mission Fuel, you are welcome to go ahead and to reach out to us. Feel free to email me, and you'll know why you'll want that here in just a little bit. So here we go. Very first thing to be able to know is this. When it comes to AI, a lot of people are feeling like we are behind. And we say things like, oh my gosh, it is going so incredibly rapidly. It is impossible to be able to keep up, to be able to know exactly what to do and how to do it and so on. I agree with that. Sometimes I feel like that, and we're literally on the cutting edge, and some would say even on the bleeding edge of what AI has to be able to offer. Here's the thing to be able to know is that each dot on this chart represents a number of people that are in the world. So in this case, 2,500 dots equals about 0.1 billion people that are on the planet. If we go and we imagine that for just a second, the people that are using, like our free chatbot users and that sort of thing, it's a relatively small subsection. Then if we take a look at the people who are actually paying for it, even though we in the association space are surrounded by people that are paying for things like AI, we know that it's actually just an even smaller subsection. And of those, we're talking about an even smaller subsection, 3.2 million people there or so, that are basically out there to be able to use code and to actually scaffold things like what we're about to be able to talk about today. The point being is that we are literally just getting started when we think about this AI movement. When we think about, things like cell phones, if we asked around the people literally across the globe, most people have cell phones. But we're literally just beginning the process of the enculturation really around AI. And so with that, I think that's important context to be able to understand, because when it comes to e-learning, what we know is that demand has simply outpaced production. And the reason for that is because of all of those gray squares that we have. We know that all of a sudden e-learning has become more and more and more accessible in ways that we never thought possible. We are, as far as our budgets haven't necessarily grown, but the demand has really grown around how to be able to do it. So what we have to figure out is how do we actually create additional production capacity to be able to meet that demand along the way. In addition to that, one of the things that we know is that every week of delay basically causes us to be able to have a return on investment problem. And so we know that whenever we go ahead and we produce a piece of e-learning, it takes months to be able to do. Well, that's months of time, but it's also months of money that we're spending to try to be able to create a return on investment. And especially in the association space, most of the time, e-learning is seen as a cost center, not as a revenue center. There are exceptions to that rule, but they are relatively rare. Most of the reason why it is considered to be a cost center is because of this problem. It takes so long and so much money to be able to build. So today, we're going to take a look at a different model. This model is going to be called Beta A. Now, if you're an instructional designer, you know things like ADDIE and you know things like SAM. ADDIE, old school models, been around literally for, I think, 50 years. And essentially what we do when we design e-learning is we analyze, we design, we develop, we implement, we evaluate. There's a problem with the model, though, is that we never actually get to evaluation. We actually never get to the stage to be able to determine what actually we're doing works. So that's problematic. In addition to that, when we think about analyze, that means that we go out, we do the research, then we come back and then we do the designing, then we go back and then we go to do the development. And all the time we are basically including the subject matter expert in that content creation. It's problematic because it's slow, incredibly slow. If we go and we take a look at the SAM model, it was faster, it was better. But the problem is that the successive approximation model essentially has the same problem as ADDIE, in that although we produce a prototype, generally speaking, that prototype takes a very long time to be able to build. And then the iterations after that still require us to be able to go back to the subject matter experts to be able to do it. So now we need to solve that problem. And the way that we're going to do that is with Beta A. This is basically the model that we use here at Mission Fuel, and we want to be able to share it with you so that way you have the ability to be able to replicate it as well. So here's basically the Beta A system, what it looks like, and then we're going to demonstrate it a little bit in action here in just a second. So basically the Beta A system looks like this. First, we're going to build the material. And sometimes we're going to build it without a subject matter expert. Then what we're going to do is we're going to supply that to the subject matter expert. We're going to do the building first based on data that might be out there. Maybe we do an interview of the subject matter expert in advance, maybe, or maybe the information that we have out there is enough to be able to prove that it actually is valid enough that the subject matter expert says, yes, that's best practice. That's what we should be sharing with our association. And then therefore they go ahead and they approve. So subject matter experts now get pushed to the end of the creation process rather than having them in the creation process. And I'll show you a little bit more about what I mean by that along the way. Because as we know, as instructional designers, most of the time the bottleneck actually happens to be the subject matter expert that causes that. Not due to any fault of their own, just simply because of the fact that it is not their full-time job. Being instructional designers is our full-time job. It is the thing that we do that we need to be able to then accelerate to allow for them to be able to verify. Once we have verified it, we know that it works. We're going to go ahead and test it. We're going to distribute it on Cadmium platforms as an example, on Elevate, Ethos, and so on. And what we're going to do is we're going to test it and we're going to distribute it and get it out there into the real world. And we're actually going to get a chance to be able to see it in action. Then we're going to analyze it. We're going to gather some data. Anything from course completion to how will they do on the exams, all those sort of things, basically the performance that we're going to get. And then what we're going to have the opportunity is to now actually adjust. Before, when we created a piece of e-learning, we said, done. 6 months of our lives to be able to build 1 hour of e-learning in some cases. And now what we have the ability to do is make that so much faster. So now we have the ability to not just determine or not just do the build, but to also go ahead and to make adjustments along the way. This is where you're going to hear this a lot over the course of the next 3 to 5 years. This terminology that we are moving from instructional designers to being performance engineers. And that is a very, very different mindset for instructional designers to get into. We are not necessarily the builders of content. AI can do most of that work for us. We are the engine that now all of a sudden adds to the performance of organizations. We are now no longer the cost center. We are the revenue driver of the organization because we have the ability to help it improve in a way that never could have been done before. So some of you in the room I know are probably thinking, gosh, you know what, this whole AI thing, it is not necessarily a thing. I just want to be able to put this in perspective for you when we begin to really dive into what this means as far as artificial intelligence is concerned. This is a video of Will Smith eating spaghetti. This basically took place over the course of the last 2.5 years. Essentially, the video was designed to be a way to demonstrate how AI has progressed. And essentially, Will Smith was basically the character that people chose to be able to say Will Smith eating spaghetti is the validation of how good AI is for the general public generally. So I'm going to go ahead and play this video for you just to get sort of the glimpse of it. And remember, this is going to take just a couple seconds to be able to go through. Here we go. Of course, 2024. See, it's not so great. Now it's 2025. Wow, this is good. And even better, then we got 2026.
So have you heard of Kling 3.0? I heard it can create multiple scene cuts like this with a single prompt. And it knows when to cut to whoever is talking.
And now we're here.
Man, we've come a long way.
Right down to the laugh. Consider that for just a second. Will Smith eating spaghetti went from crazy terrible to now you could not tell the difference of whether or not that is Will Smith. Absolutely remarkable that that is AI generated. And remember, it's only going to get better from here. We're talking about the possibility of being able to see Will Smith from all 3D directions, controlled by a single individual user. The ability to be able to choose your own adventure in the context of a movie. And now all of a sudden the ability, of course, to produce full-length movies in the context of a single prompt. The point being is that we want to be able to figure out how to be able to now accelerate that e-learning. And for us as instructional designers to be able to take advantage of that very same situation. Let me go ahead and keep on going there. And there we go. All right, let's go ahead and do a quick experiment. We're going to do this with an AI tool called Course Engine. And here's the tool. So if we go ahead and we take a quick look here, you'll get a chance to be able to actually see that this is Course Engine right here. Now, what I've done is I went ahead and I added the Claude extension. If you haven't done this yet, don't worry. Make sure, though, that you do experiment a little bit with Claude. You can access Claude in 3 distinct ways. One of those is to go ahead and to actually use it on the web, right? The ChatGPT experience that most of us are familiar with. The second way to be able to get to it is to be able to actually download it on your desktop. And there's actually even a coding experience that you can do as well, but that's through a command prompt. That's a totally different story. But there's a third feature that most people overlook that is absolutely wild. And here's basically what it does. See this little guy over here? I'm going to look over on my screen over here so you can see basically where I'm at. I created a little prompt. This is an extension of Claude. And basically what it's going to do is it's going to operate my website. This website is Course Engine. This is Mission Fuel's proprietary tool. I have dropped in a document right here called The Future of Instructional Design. If I go ahead and I take a quick look right here, you'll be able to see that document and see that there's nothing crazy about it. It's just a simple PDF document that happens to be here. Then what I'm going to do is I went ahead and I dropped that document right in here. In this case, I'm not going to choose a template. I'm going to allow for it to basically choose the light theme template. So you can see just basically what out of the box kind of looks like. Then what I've done is I went ahead and I created this prompt. This prompt basically says, look, we're going to ask you to generate a course. It's going to be one module of 35 slides with 5 learning objectives. By the way, this tool can create 10 modules, 60 slides at a time, 60 seconds per slide. So it can produce up to 10 hours of e-learning in one go, which is kind of remarkable. But what we're going to do is we're going to create one module, 35 slides with 5 learning objectives focused only on higher order thinking skills and deliver primarily scenario-based questions. I wanted to produce 2 domains, learning objectives, all along the way. I've given it some special instructions about not to move forward until the course is complete and so on. And so basically I've asked it to go ahead and to then produce voiceover, including how long I want the voiceover to be and so on. And then when it's finally done, I'm going to ask it to basically publish to SCORM. Once that's done, I'm going to go ahead and go back to the module, and then I'm going to ask it to basically produce the next module, that same one, in Spanish. So I'm now going to go ahead and press continue on here. And so let's go ahead and press the continue button. We're going to allow for Claude to basically work. I'm going to remove my cursor from the screen and see no hands. It now is going to go ahead and to basically begin to operate the screen for me. Now, there's no guarantee that this is going to work. It is possible that it could time out. It is possible that it could, who knows what could happen along the way. The point is, though, is that now all of a sudden, as instructional designers, we can automate so much of exactly what we typically would do. Is that we would go out, we would interview the subject matter expert, we would review that document, we would break it down, we would put it into an Excel spreadsheet that would include all those learning objectives. Then we would go ahead and then we would then type the script. Then we'd go and verify by the subject matter expert. Then, and you get the idea. Like, it would take so long to be able to do that it would take, you know, a very long time to be able to do. Oh, by the way, question from the audience was, when using a well-known real people, do you need their permission to create videos such as the one with Will Smith? The answer is yes. I think that generally speaking, it is a good idea to go ahead and request permission. Now, in the case of Will Smith, he has publicly said that he is open to and willing to be able to go ahead and use his public image in things like AI. Lots of celebrities totally fine with it. Other celebrities not so fine with it. And so you're going to want to make sure that your celebrity, whoever you choose, is okay with going ahead and to use their imagery to be able to do. Fantastic question. And I think it really lends itself and leads itself to the conversation around intellectual property. Remembering that we want to make sure that we're using closed large language models, so that way we don't have our stuff that's going out there into the world. All right, you can basically see that the structure is now complete. It's going to go ahead and it's going to build the overall module, and we're going to go ahead and go back to our presentation. It's going to then continue to build in the background, but you can see that basically it is doing the job of an instructional designer. Even if we take a look at analyze, evaluate, synthesize, critique, all of those are higher order thinking skills that I asked for it to go ahead and to produce. So its format is really around Blue's taxonomy. Does it have to be? No. You could have chosen Gagney's. You could have chosen, you know, anything along those lines that's possible. There we go, 35 slides, and it's going to go ahead and it's going to start. All right, we're going to go ahead and shrink that down, and we're going to let it go ahead and to build along the way. But you can see that already we went ahead and we've got we have our module looking ready to go. All right, here we go. Let's go ahead and keep on going with the presentation. Here is the thing, the 3 things that hold true. When we think about e-learning, there are several items that I think that we as instructional designers need to be able to understand in order to really make this shift when it comes to the beta A model. And here's number 1. Number 1 thing is that instructional design teams have the most important job on the planet right now today. And for me, this is the reason why Mission Fuel exists, is because we have an incredible problem that we have to be able to figure out how to solve. And so when we do look to be able to solve that problem, it's this. It's basically around this idea of, do we lose jobs? Do we create no change of jobs, or do we create jobs with this AI revolution that is going on right now? The problem is that we don't really know whether or not we're going to lose jobs, no change, or create jobs, of course, but we have all sorts of people who are out there telling us. So, for example, Anthropic CEO, Daro Amidai, he basically says that 50% of entry-level white-collar jobs are going to be gone in the course of the next 5 years, potentially raising the unemployment to 20% over the course, again, of the next 4 years, the year 2030. If we go in and we take a look at groups like Duolingo and Shopify, they basically say, no, that's not what's going to happen. That in fact, what it's going to happen is to create this dramatic increase in productivity. And with that dramatic increase in productivity, we're not necessarily going to see a change in the job market. We'll just create more with the people that we have. And then on the flip side of that, we have groups like Klarna, who went ahead and eliminated a whole bunch of people, 700 full-time customer service people, right? They tried to be able to do it with an AI chatbot. But the truth is then they choose to be able to hire those folks back because of complaints. Then we take a look at the other folks that are out there who are basically saying, like, look, it's going to create jobs. Because even if we take a look at Google's DeepMind and Lawrence Berkeley National Laboratory, they were able to develop 2 million new materials. Well, we have to figure out what to do with those new materials, who to sell them to, how to go, and so on, which lends itself to the idea that, in fact, we will create jobs and that they'll just simply look a little bit differently. So ultimately, what we know is that there are people out there, for example, the World Economic Forum, who say that they're going to create 170 million new jobs and it'll displace 92 million. So it'll actually offset that by 80 million new jobs. The truth is, at this stage, we're just simply guessing. We don't know whether or not jobs are going to be replaced like full-heartedly. We don't know if there's going to be no change, and we don't know if we're going to get the chance to create jobs. But here's what we do know, is that jobs will be lost and jobs will be gained. And we know that there's going to be a great displacement that will occur. There's going to be a dramatic economic shift that many of us are seeing right now, even in our own everyday jobs. If we go and we take a look at what Claude says, or Anthropic, the creator of Claude, say, they look at this and they say that theoretically, 96% of the jobs involving computer and math can be done potentially by AI. But if we go all the way down the list here of legal, 92%, arts and media, 88%, and so on. If we go all the way down the line to grounds and maintenance, now all of a sudden we have potentially robotics that could do that. But will that occur over the course of the next 5 years? Likely not. But what we will see again is going to be this dramatic shift in terms of the overall job, in terms of how we do it, and also in terms of the jobs that are actually then created. Point being is that jobs are going to be different. And there needs to be folks who are going to go ahead and to help to be able to make this shift. We know that 40% of the global workforce are going to require reskilling over the course of the next 3 years. And that's the reason why instructional designers are the most important people on the planet right now, is because we have 1 billion people with a B that need to be retrained. It will take approximately 120 hours of time to be able to learn those AI skills. That means that we're talking about 120 billion hours of reskilling that will take place. Most of that learning will not take place in a classroom. It will take place through e-learning. It'll take place on everything from YouTube all the way to structured e-learning like what we're creating at Mission Fuel. If we go ahead and we take a look at who's actually going to reskill the global economy, some people say, well, it's K-12. I say, no. I'm a former school teacher, high school teacher. I also was an elementary and middle school principal. I can tell you that K-12 education is simply too slow. By the time our seniors graduate from high school, let alone our freshmen, the AI will dramatically shift in a way that no one could possibly imagine. Post-secondary, again, too slow. Boot camps, not many of them even available, and way too expensive to be able to deploy. So consider the groups that are actually going to do it, because if it's not them, then who's it going to be? Well, the truth is it's going to be associations, and it's going to be corporations. And who's going to lead that charge of that reskilling? It's going to be instructional designers. And who's going to deploy that learning? Well, it's going to be learning management systems, just like we see at Cadmium. The point being is that we are in a fundamental shift for how e-learning is going to be done and how learning is going to be done over the course of the next few years. And it's going to be up to us to be able to make this shift occur. So with that, that's number one. Instructional design teams have the most important job on the planet. Number two is going to be this. Speed and quality don't compete, they compound. It used to be that you could either have it fast, you could have it cheap, or you could have it good. Those are really the three options, right? Now, though, speed and quality, they don't compete with one another. And along with that, price comes down as well. So from an instructional designer perspective, we know that speed and quality, they're not going to compete, because I just showed you with Course Engine that it's actually producing those slides right now in the background along the way. In fact, I haven't looked at it yet. Maybe we should take a quick look so you can see kind of what it looks like here. And let's see, is that the right one? Yeah, there we go. All right, and so now it went ahead and it produced the actual e-learning along the way. And so we'll take a look at that here in just a second and to actually see how it turned out. Sort of crazy that now all of a sudden that module is actually done and ready to go. And so let's go ahead and make sure there that that it's going there. And we'll just get that guy out of the way. Okay, next thing that we need to be able to consider is a little bit about the 210, the amount of money that it used to take to be able to produce 1 hour of e-learning. In order to do so, we're looking at 200 hours of time and $20,000 of money to be able to go ahead and to produce an hour of e-learning, which is kind of crazy to be able to consider. So what we want to be able to do is to say, okay, well, what exactly is a way that we can accelerate this? Because remember, it used to be that it would take us so long to do because we were constantly checking in with subject matter experts and constantly checking in with designers, et cetera, when all of a sudden now we can encapsulate that all into one. So remember, back to the beta A system, we know that we're going to build, we're going to examine, we're going to test, analyze, and then we're going to adjust. And we're witnessing the building right now along the way. All right. Well, you may wonder, like, what exactly is it that you're looking to be able to build with that beta A model? It's essentially going to be similar to Storyline 360 type modules, voiceover, PowerPoint, interactive, e-learning that you might see in something like a iSpring, or you might see something in Captivate. Those are the sort of e-learnings that can now be produced with interactions, etc., that we might happen to see that are out there. When we think about what that looks like, remember way back when in 2010, this piece was done by the Chapman Alliance. And we relied on this model to basically for the next 13 years to be able to say that it took us 184 hours to build 1 hour of e-learning. What we know now, or what we knew back then, is at $100 an hour, that basically brings you to $18,000 to be able to build. If we go ahead and we take a look at that from today's dollars, we're looking at approximately $27,000 to be able to build that same 1 hour of e-learning if we use the old school professional ways. So in 2026, 200 hours of e-learning, we're looking at, or 200 hours to build 1 hour of e-learning is $30,000. No wonder the Association e-learning has been seen as a cost center, because if we look at 5 hours of e-learning, that's $150,000. Impossible to be able to do. So we consider, like, where exactly is that time going? Well, where the time is going to be going, it's going to be in things like the analysis, the design, the development. Remember, using that old school kind of framework that we happen to have along the way. The truth is that when we think about the actual way that e-learning is developed, only about 40% of it is like true thinking. Most of it is actually production, and it's actually waiting. It is clicking the little buttons that we happen to see in tools like Captivate, right? That's where most of our time is being spent. So instead, what we want to do is, of course, focus in on the true thinking parts of our job that allow us to be truly performance drivers rather than necessarily content creators, which is a little bit of a shift to be able to consider that thinking that goes along with that. Because many of our friends, including me, I spent dozens and dozens of hours mastering the skills of tools like Storyline 360, when in fact, a lot of those skills can now be automated. Here's the thing, is that production means manual and waiting means wasted. What we want to do is we want to make sure that we get out of that production, and we want to make sure that we're limiting our wait time. And subject matter experts are, of course, when they used to be the content creators, they create the bottleneck. It isn't the writing that's the bottleneck. It's the actual content creators when they want to be the ones who go out there to create it, when most of the time AI can do it along the way. Now, that throws us, of course, into this idea around AI tools and saying like, okay, if we're now going to go ahead and we're going to do these builds, what are the tools that we can use to go ahead and do it? Well, the way that we're going to do it is, of course, with these tools, Gamma, 11 Labs, Descripts, and Synthia, like all of those tools that happen to be out there. But take it from someone who did it. Basically, what we know is that AI tools brought us from 201 hours down to 68. It was the best I could do. It was literally the best that I could do to be able to use all of those tools and all the expense that went along with them and every labor hour that went into those. So when I think about, for example, how long it takes to be able to build 1 hour of e-learning, better, but still not great. It still takes, anywhere about $15,000 to be able to build 1 hour of e-learning with that time, or about $12,000 to be able to use all those AI tools, and then of course still do the build. The reason why it doesn't work is because of a book that I happen to help write, and it's called Old School with New Tools. When the interwebs first came about and apps first came about, I happened to write a book with a friend of mine named Tim Brown. And Tim and I sat down and wrote this book, Old School with New Tools. And with that book, basically the notion was that we're going to overlay tools in the sales process. And what we learned is that most oftentimes it didn't work. And the reason why it didn't work was because you weren't fundamentally shifting the actual model. What you were doing was basically using ADDIE and then overlaying AI tools on top of it. It doesn't really work. And so what we wanted to do was to be able to then figure out how do we actually change the full model. And that's why we stepped away from ADDIE, we stepped away from SAM, and we went ahead and moved to Beta A. By doing so, it allows for us to now basically replace the model, and now we have decreased the ability or the build of those e-learning down to 5 to 1, with a goal to be able to get to 1 to 1. All right, so Beta A system, basically we are focused on the build. Now you might say, well, what about the rest of the things that are in there? Now, all of those are super important to be able to do. And so if you would like to be able to have 2 things for us here, I'm happy to be able to share them with you. One of them is, of course, going to be this document that's called the Future Instructional Design. The other one is going to be called the Beta A AI Prompting Framework. If you'd like to be able to have either of these 2 documents, make sure that you go ahead and that you reach out, or that you basically say yes or something along those lines in the chat, and I'll go ahead and I will get those over to you along the way. But basically what it does is it allows for you to use Claude-based prompts. Now, obviously, you can use these very same prompts in the context of your of ChatGPT or anything along those lines. But basically, it just takes you step by step on how to be able to do the e-learning in the context of Beta A. It's going to help you to build the course. It's going to help you to do the examination. It's going to help you to be able to do the test, and so on. So feel free to just simply type yes, and then we'll go ahead and we'll give those over to you. So what we're focused on today is, of course, going to be the build. Now, with the build, we're going to go, let's go ahead and keep on going there. And so with that, now what we want to do is we really want to focus in on the 3rd principle, which is this, is that instructional design should arrive how and when you need it. And what I mean by that is that the help that outside firms give you, I think are going to be super critical that we happen to have along the way. I think that one of the things that needs to happen as associations is we have to have a shift in the way that we think about how we use outside vendors. Because in a lot of respects, now we can do a lot of the work ourselves. And so what we want to be able to do is that we want to basically say, look, we're going to meet you in your place of need. For example, many of you would feel totally comfortable in using a tool like Course Engine. Others of you would say, no, I'm going to use the tool like Course Engine and get you partially the way there. And then others are going to say, look, I just want to be able to do it myself. I'm sorry, I want you to basically do it for me. So there's really the three ways. And when we think about the tools and the ability to be able to generate things like e-learning, or frankly, any tool that we would want out there, then what we want to be able to do is to say, where exactly is it that we can meet in the place of need? So when you think about instructional designers, it's the same thing that when we look at the internal instructional designer, because you could say, well, gosh, could I turn this over to a subject matter expert like a Course Engine tool to let them do it? That's totally possible. Or could you allow for them to go ahead and to produce the prompts and then go ahead and use them on their own? Certainly, because now the barrier is not content creation. And to a degree, many people now can be instructional designers, just as vibe coding has allowed for us to be potentially app developers. The point being is that we need the opportunity as instructional designers to be able to be there when it's needed, whether it's internal or external. We can either do it ourselves, we can do it with you, or we can do it for you. And I think that generally speaking, you're going to see a lot more of that come about as we go. So with that, we already talked a little bit about this, but basically do it yourself, done with you, done for you. And I think this will become ubiquitous across all sorts of platforms that provide services similar to instructional design. All right, I went ahead and of course, we've got our 7-day free trial that we happen to have. I'm going to go ahead and bring up our Course Engine so we can take a quick look at that. And then I'm going to field some questions along the way. And so here we go. We'll go ahead and grab that guy and see if I can bring this up for us. I think that I've got the right one. I hope I do. Oh, here we go. All right. So as you can see here, basically what's happened is it went ahead and it's built the actual module. It's still waiting to actually, it looks like it's waiting to be able to produce the voiceover along the way. But you can see here what we've got. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and turn off my Claude bot here, and we're going to go ahead and get rid of that guy. And we're going to go ahead and we're going to produce the actual voiceover that's going to go along the way. Now, what's nice is that this then allows for us to basically then generate the script. It will generate the actual voiceover. It'll generate the animations and so on. Now, what's great about it is that when you export, it has the ability to, or of course, export via PowerPoint animations, you can then place into your own tool. So for example, let's imagine that you wanted to upload it to iSpring or upload it to Captivate. You could totally do that. And then of course you can export it to SCORM, and then you can even publish it to Webhook to be able to get to the learning management system. The point being is that the reason why I share these tools, this particular tool with you, is that certainly using tools like Gamma and so on, they're going to help. There's no doubt about that. And what we want to figure out a way to do is to be able to decrease the cost development of such tools or of instructional design that then allows for us to go ahead and to do builds like this in pretty much record time. If we go and we scroll on down, you'll see that there's also, of course, assessment-based questions that are in here. We'll let that one pop on up. There we go. And so here's basically a scenario-based question. A university wants to implement an adaptive learning platform to support diverse student needs, which AI-driven feature would most effectively personalize learning paths in real time. So that was a higher level question that would allow for us to go ahead and to do. All right, so that basically gives you the notion about what's possible when it comes to AI. Now, we've got some extra time here. I'm happy to go ahead and to take a look at Claude, ChatGPT, any of the other tools that happen to be out there, and provide maybe even some guidance around how to be able to use them. I'm also, of course, open to be able to field questions around Course Engine or just simply the future of instructional design, even beyond Beta A, and kind of what we're going to see when it comes to instructional design features that will really revolutionize the way that e-learning is done over the course of the years. And so, so here we go. Chris, why don't you go and come on in, and let's take some time to field some questions.
Yes, thank you so much, Dan. There is absolutely no question that you're a teacher. I was just sitting here and learning. I was almost taking notes, but now we'll be shifting gears and answering some questions. So one that came in was, what kind of inputs work best when using AI during e-learning or course development? Is it PDFs, PPTs, transcripts? What of those work best?
Oh, all of them. That's what makes AI great, is that we can use any of those documents and place them in tools like Claude or ChatGPT to basically then go ahead and to produce the e-learning that you're after. You can limit it to strictly that document and say, I only want you to use this document to build. And then, of course, you can use things like PowerPoint, or you can say, look, I want you to go out there to the web. I want you to use deep research to really go out there and to provide as many citations as you can possibly find to go ahead and to then support the e-learning that we're going to go out there and create. Fantastic question. And the truth is, it's all of those things, including webinars, that can then be turned into e-learning like incredibly quickly, where you can basically chop them up, use them, and insert questions along the way, turn them into SCORM files, and of course use them in the context of places like Cadmium.
Yeah, that's awesome. So this webinar could become like a course. So that's very interesting. So another question that we have is, how much cleanup is needed after, the AI generates content? What are some things that one should look out for when doing that cleanup review process?
Oh, that is such a great question. I think number one, you want to make sure that the things that you have are going to be on brand. I think that's going to be one piece that people miss. Get a template, love it, and stick with it. That's going to be one of the elements, is that there's no reason now to go out there and to recreate the wheel every single time when it comes to e-learning. That's going to be number one. Number two thing is you want to, and you're going to want to involve your marketing people in that, right? And make sure that you've got a solid template there. Number two is, of course, you want to make sure that you're involving the subject matter expert. Oh, definitely. But give them a finished product. Allow for them the opportunity to be able to see what's missing rather than having to be able to create from scratch. That's the advantage of being able to use tools like artificial intelligence that allows for us to now say, SME, is this right? What am I missing? And many times the SME has developed something, for example, a PowerPoint or a white paper, or they know of research that has been used out there that will allow for them to be able to then say, let's use this research in a way that allows for us to be able to then produce e-learning really very, very effectively. And so that's another tool that we can use out there. So I would say subject matter experts for sure. I would say that branding for sure. I think that things like making sure that the imagery aligns with the overall look and feel. Definitely. From a context standpoint, make sure that if you're doing translations, that it's actually localized translations is another aspect. Make sure that if we're going out there and we're producing something in Portuguese, well, what Portuguese is it? Are we focused on Brazilian Portuguese, or are we talking about Portuguese from Portugal, right? And we got to make sure that we're using the right dialect, and we're also using tools or are also using context that fits the situation as well, because a scenario that works here in the United States may not necessarily work in Brazil. And so we want to make sure that the e-learning fits the context of where they're from as well. And something that could be seen as really kind of, almost, funny or something along those lines could also be seen as a dramatic insult elsewhere. So and AI can catch those things for us as well.
Awesome. And yeah, that's great. And we just had a question come in. Can you provide best guidance for using AI such as Copilot without access to a tool like Course Engine?
100% I can do that. And so here's the thing, is that first off, use a prompting guide like what I'll share with you. That's going to be number one. Number two thing that you've got is really going to go ahead into so the question is about how to be able to address so many questions coming in, how to be able to address things like Copilot. So first off, ask Copilot how to use it. that is going to be one of the most important things that you can do. Ask it to create your own guide for creating e-learning in the context of Copilot. Copilot has an amazing feature that plugs into PowerPoint. Well, it will generate that PowerPoint for you. It will also go ahead and generate notes for you that can act basically as speaker notes. Then it can also animate that for you, right? If you go and you ask it, it's not great yet, but it can do that. And so then you can go ahead and you can use that tool to go ahead and upload into a tool like Storyline 360 if you wanted to. Point being is that number one most important thing is ask ChatGPT, ask Claude, ask Copilot, Gemini, how can I best use you to create e-learning? And it will produce its own guide. And then you can create a replicable process from that. That's where agentic AI comes in. And that, of course, would be the next piece that we can talk about at a future webinar.
Okay, awesome. We have quite a few more questions, so I'll just keep them coming. So would it provide citations? I'm assuming it could be course engine or AI, and our SMEs are clinicians. So I'm concerned that we won't be able to get all the content through AI.
Great question. And the answer is yes. And so the newest iteration of Course Engine, which is about to come out here at the probably next week, it does full-on citations. And with those citations, what we found is that if we use deep research, it does a really great job of doing those citations that we can actually then go back to and actually verify. I think that that's going to be one of the most important components of this, is that we want to make sure that wherever citations are, that we can go out there and we can actually verify that they are that they're legitimate. And so so the answer is yes, Course Engine can do it. Part of that is going to be that we want to be able to use deep research. So you're going to start in a tool like Claude or ChatGPT. You're going to do that research, bring it over into a tool like Course Engine, and then it will produce the slides, citations, and so on along the way. And of course, if you brand it and templatize it, you can actually tell it exactly where you want those citations. You want them all to be, with the floating numbers, and then, the final slide be the one where all those are located, or where exactly is it that you want those citations to be? And if you build the template well, you do that in Claude, you've got it. It's pretty slick about how it works. Great question.
Awesome. So another question is, what do you do when you can't find everything online? Like, can you upload like white papers? Are you able to upload extra materials for those more complex ideas?
For sure. So, and then again, this is where we basically say, hey, look, you can go out there into the world and you can find the research on your own. You can use Course Engine to support it and to help. I think that there's a combination of those items, things like white papers that happen to be out there. Be careful in using things like textbooks and that sort of stuff. That stuff is copyrighted information. You're not going to want to throw that into a tool, into any tool, frankly, because we really want to respect those that have spent, dozens of years trying to be able to build that material, and then to be able to then throw that into an AI tool really isn't fair in my mind. And so we really want to make sure that that we're not doing that. But when it comes to things like public editions of white papers and so on, as long as we're citing them appropriately, totally okay to be able to use those.
Okay, awesome. I think, bridging from that, we also have a question specifically about any guidance you have on copyright when using AI generated content, because as we all know, it can be very, very tricky to navigate.
Yeah, this is such a great question. And to be honest, we're operating in very much a gray area in a lot of respects. And the reason why I say that is because just like that white paper item that we mentioned, right? If it's out there in the public domain, then I would have the ability to go ahead and to use it. Now, let's imagine, though, that it was a publication that happens to be in a magazine that was done. Now, all of a sudden, now, is that usable? Or if I go in and I say that I want it to be in a certain tone along the way. So imagine that I'm like, I want it to be in the tone of Oprah Winfrey. Well, is that a violation, right? I don't know. And that's where the courts are really trying to be able to discern, at least at this stage, with this administration. It does not appear as if they're going to create any sort of rules around the use of content in this way. I think it's up to us to kind of police ourselves to a degree right now to say, look, I'm not going to go out there and upload a full-on textbook and then create new content from it. That I think is where the tricky part comes in. Now, you're creating study guides and all that sort of stuff. kind of a gray area, like where exactly does that live? But when you're creating new content from old content, that's where I think it can be problematic.
For sure. Thanks so much for providing some insight on that. Very interested to see how that's going to look in the next 5 or 10 years.
Exactly.
And for the next question, does Course Engine have the ability to overlay a scripted voice to the slides to create like an MP4 recording of the course that you can upload to the LMS?
Absolutely, you can do that. In fact, that's what it does. It produces that MP4 that overlays on the slides, that then animates those slides, that then ends up creating, the full-on course. And so you can actually publish it as a full-on animated, voiceover-driven with interactions directly from Course Engine as a SCORM file that can be uploaded to the learning management system. So your question around can we overlay scripted voice to the slides? Yes, that is possible to be able to do, and so that's kind of a neat option to be able to have as well. The other, of course, option there is that we just strip out the MP4, we use that transcript, and then we go ahead and then we overlay or place that into Course Engine to be able to then generate new voiceover from it as well. All of those are possibilities. You can even take those MP4s, transcribe them, push them into Course Engine, generate a course from them. All of that is possible.
Okay, fantastic. Really good to know. For the next question, what format of content have you noticed is more or less successful when using like any generative AI or even Course Engine?
Yeah, I would say number one is going to be accurate content. Definitely helps. And so that's going to be number one, is definitely helpful. I think the other part of that is that, that frankly, it doesn't matter, right? I mean, I went ahead and I happened to demonstrate a little bit about 2 PDFs that we developed. Those are great. 5 pages in length, they're super. You wanted to put in, you have a document that is your own association or you own that is 100 pages, no problem at all. Upload it, tell it exactly the section that you want. It will go ahead and it will take a look at only that section that you want. And if you wanted to provide the entire context of the book, you can do that. Remember, it's all about going ahead and being able to create 10 hours of content in one go. The point being, though, I think that whenever we think about the type of content really doesn't matter anymore. If it's accurate, it works. It's going to work. And so in our case, really printed material is going to be it. But we now know that Claude, Gemini especially, can consume video. So I can take a screen share, I can upload it to Gemini. It's done. Like, it'll analyze that for me. It'll tell me what it does. It's unreal about what's possible around things like even video. And eventually that'll be possible in a tool like Course Engine.
Yeah, that's awesome. So for the next question, how many voice options are there for AI generated voice within Course Engine? And can you save or reuse a favorite voice for future courses for consistency?
Absolutely. And so the voices that are in there, there's actually 30 different voices that are currently there, and that's all localized based on language. And so, but if you didn't like the voice in there, we customize voices for you. You can basically have your executive director go ahead and get on in there and do it. So all of that is possible as far as the voices are concerned. But right now, 30 voices. And if you had one special that you really wanted to use, we could totally do that. We also have a plugin for 11 Labs. Internally, we happen to use the Google Voice API, but of course, we can also use 11 Labs and those tools as well. So great question.
Fantastic. We have quite a few more questions, but just to check, can people email you if they have like a question like after the webinar, or if their question wasn't able to be answered?
Yeah, for sure. In fact, Brian, if you're okay with it, if you're okay to go ahead and bring up my presentation there again, here's my contact information. And feel free to call, text, email, including, of course, create a Calendly link meeting with me. You can go ahead and use the QR code. Feel free to reach out. Of course, you can reach out on the website as well. We would love a chance to visit with you, even if it's just to talk about not necessarily, what Course Engine could do or what Mission Fuel does. Because remember, we are a full-on instructional design firm. We are not just Course Engine. We have the ability to basically, I think last month we produced somewhere in the neighborhood of 60 hours of e-learning in 1 month. That's unheard of. Like, no one has been able to do that I know of, with incredible expense. And so so for us to be able to do that as an instructional design firm, solely and almost solely serving associations, is really pretty neat. So so there's my contact information. Please reach out.
Okay, awesome. So I think that relates a lot to the next question, where someone asked, how long has Course Engine been in use and how many clients are using it?
Oh, great question. So Course Engine really has been around for about a year. We've used it internally almost exclusively over the course of that year. We actually only went public with the tool back in, gosh, it was late February, early March. So I want to say it was around March 1st that we actually put it out there. So we have a few clients that are currently on it. I want to say that we currently have 6 that are actually actively using Course Engine on the regular. And then we have another dozen or so that are using it as a in their sort of experimental phase. So about 20 or so that we've got that are actively using the tool. And so it's really pretty fun to be able to see it grow. And we think that it is really kind of the new way to go as far as the do it yourself, done for you, done with you kind of a model, like I said earlier. So I think it's going to kind of take off, which is pretty fun. But as far as we're aware, we're the only ones on the planet that have this tool, which is kind of fun to be able to say that we were first, which is neat.
Yeah, that is pretty awesome, especially the planet. That's a lot of people.
Yes.
But for the last question to wrap everything up, what's the first thing that I should do after this webinar, the asker? And also, if I can't do Course Engine, then where should I start?
Great question. So number one thing is just reach out. Like I said, even if it isn't about Course Engine or any of that, you just want to know like what to do next in terms of the instructional design journey, or how you can use tools out there, for example, like Gamma or Claude or any of those. Please reach out. Like, that is the reason why we are here, is that we know this is like missional for us, that we can go ahead and we can support associations in the e-learning development process. So that's first, reach out. Number 2 is go to your favorite tool, whatever it is, whether it's Claude or whether it's or ChatGPT or Copilot, Gemini, Grok, whatever, and ask that tool, how can I best use you to be able to create e-learning at scale, rapidly? How can I go about doing that? And then follow those instructions. That would be number 1. Number 2 is I would go ahead and I would then experiment with that process and then iterate on it. What is going to allow for us to be able to make this leap is a pure innate curiosity and your willingness to be able to step into that space and just ask the question, what's possible? It will revolutionize the way that you produce e-learning.
Man, that is some really good advice. And we do have time for one more quick little question. So after, you iterate a little bit, what are some ways they can check for quality when it comes to creating these courses?
That is a great question. So quality partially is in the eye of the beholder, right? Is that when it comes to design and those sort of things, we want to make sure that it's brand aligned and so on. I think that that's going to be number 1. Number 2 is making sure that it is accurate. And that's where the subject matter expert comes in. But don't allow the subject matter expert to create the content unless they have it already. I mean, that's really the key there. Use tools like deep research to generate the overall research, then use that to then go ahead and to generate the actual course. And you can do that even without a tool like Course Engine. You can do it. It won't be as fast necessarily as Course Engine, but you can really shrink down that process. Like I said, we got it down to 68-1, which is really pretty good in comparison to what it used to be. So keep iterating, keep trying, and make sure that you do verify that the material is accurate.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Dan. Those are the number of questions that we were able to tackle and right on time. But I just wanted to thank you so much for coming on and sharing your knowledge and experience. And it's been very enlightening and also very interactive.
Yay. Thank you so much, Chris. I really appreciate the opportunity. I look forward to next time.
All